Asia Tech Podcast.
Hello, welcome to Asia Tech Podcast. This is Ashley Talks. My name's Graham Brown, joined in the studio today by possibly one of the hardest working authors in Asia. Delighted to have Ashley Galina Dudarenok in the show. Ashley, how are you doing?
Doing fantastic. Hi, Graham. Hi, guys.
Great to have you here. Instantly recognizable personality in Asia. Ashley Talks, as you know, and that's seen Ashley on YouTube or on LinkedIn. How does it feel now to be a published author?
Well, feels awesome. Can't believe we did it.
Yeah, not easy, eh? Everybody talks about writing a book. I think
we were no one, and right now, published author, Amazon bestseller. That's funny, huh?
Exactly. We're going to talk about unlocking the world's largest e-market. Obviously, a guide to selling on Chinese social media. That's the top of the billing tonight. We're going to talk all about that and what the book's about, why people need to read it, and obviously why you wrote the book. So you launched this book, well, you've only just launched it this month, haven't you? So has everything settled down yet, or is things still a little bit crazy?
Well, it's still a little bit crazy. We just launched it last week and it hit Amazon bestseller. And so this is week 2, and it's also Chinese New Year. So we have a lot of people ordering it for, let's say, a New Year's gift, right? Spring Festival. And yeah, it's extremely exciting. I think, it's important when you publish a book, you basically just need to keep the momentum. And we are issuing hard copies now and placing them in physical stores. And we're working on audiobooks. So it's still ongoing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's never ending, the life of an author. Have you done a book signing yet? Are you going to do one of those? Do authors do those these days?
Yeah, we had one last week. And
okay.
It was on Wednesday. We launched the book on Monday and we did the signing on Wednesday. I felt like, like that person from one of the movies, sitting, signing books, pictures, and it's so cute. People were queuing up to get their books signed. I felt so important.
That's awesome. I mean, it's still in these days of digital, people still like getting their hands on the physical book, don't they?
Yeah, I was actually surprised because you can also get it on Amazon, right? And a lot of people read on Amazon, but somehow we sold a lot more books physical.
Yeah.
Which was quite surprising. Again, I did not expect it.
Interesting. Well, you're based in Hong Kong. I think it's worth putting everything into a little bit of context because, we talked about this when you did Asia Tech Podcast Stories some time ago. You're originally from Russia, aren't you? You moved to China. You now live in Hong Kong. It's been a bit of a journey. I mean, what you've achieved in China is quite remarkable, really. I mean, writing a book on China as an outsider, effectively sort of helping people understand that market. Give us a little bit of background because, for those people that don't know you well enough, so people have probably seen you around, instantly recognizable, as I say. But what's the story? I mean, how did you come to get to go, be in China in the first place? What was the story there?
Right. I think the first thing people say when they see me and when I talk about China, they say, "My goodness, why is this blonde girl, with a long blonde braid, is telling us about marketing in China?" And then I need to tell them a bit the story that I came to China 12 years ago. I lived in mainland for 5 years. I speak, read, write Mandarin Chinese, and for the past 7 years, I've been working with marketing in China, Chinese social media. I write for tons of publications about Chinese consumers, social media, and China market in general. I also speak at a lot of events. Last year, I was selected by Alibaba to be the global influencer. So basically, they invite about a dozen people from around the world to join their 11/11 shopping festival and basically meet their top executives for 3 days, discuss where Alibaba is going. So I was invited last year to join that exclusive group, right? And right now a published author and doing, having a YouTube channel. So all these things happen because of China, because of the rise of social media, because of the rise of digital. And but in terms of my own journey, I was telling you last time, we spoke about it. I was born in Asia, so I'm almost Asian. I was born in the far east of Russia.
Right on the far east. I mean, geographically, was it Vladivostok? I can't remember. Well,
that's right. That's right. You still remember. I know.
Well, I mean, it's right on the eastern side. It's that bit that sort of comes down on that peninsula, isn't it? I can't remember exactly where it is, but it's sort of nearer China and Japan than it is Moscow, right?
Exactly, of course. So we border on, let's say, North Korea, China, and Japan. Yeah, broader border. Yeah, not directly, but that is the furthest away place, basically in Russia from Moscow, and it's also the end station of Trans-Siberian Railway. So it's a very special city. I was born back in Soviet Union, right, non-existing country, and it was the closed military port, right? So it was a very safe place and you couldn't really get in or out without permission, but it was very safe. We always had the good stuff, in Soviet Union, it was difficult to get international, let's say, produce, etc. But because we were a port city, we got a lot of things firsthand and before anybody and everybody else. So it was really cool. And we also had a lot of Asians. So I was born in Asia. We had a lot of Asians around, Koreans, Japanese, and Chinese. And my first country to visit abroad was actually China, and then Japan, Korea, right? And then when I was 11, I moved to UK. My dad sent myself and my brother to get education abroad. So I moved to UK. Then I joined him in New Zealand. My brother in New Zealand. Then I relocated to China and now Hong Kong. So made in USSR, but international.
Yeah, exactly. Best of many worlds as well. I mean, it's a fascinating journey. Do you, just out of curiosity, how good is your Chinese, your Mandarin? Because, I mean, I live here in Japan, so I'm quite familiar with what it's like to speak.
Do you speak Japanese?
I do, yeah. I do, but to speak Japanese in business, especially reading and writing, is something else. How's it in China? Have you sort of mastered that?
Yeah. My Chinese is good. It's not as good as it used to be 7 years ago because living in Hong Kong definitely takes its toll on your Mandarin Chinese. But I did my business degree. I studied business administration in China with Chinese students in Chinese language. And even now, just a couple of months ago, I got my first TV program. So I now run a 1-minute show on Now TV here in Hong Kong. And this show is being broadcast in mainland China and in Hong Kong. So it's in Mandarin Chinese. So with a bit of practice, I'm still able to, let's say, get that TV quality Chinese going. Yeah, but it's not that 100% native now, but I would still say it's like 85-90%. So it's there.
By far, it's good enough. I mean, that's the point, isn't it?
Yeah, I read and write. Right now, I'm primarily type, but I still read and write. Yeah, you need Chinese if you work with China.
Of course. Excellent. Good. All right, well, let's talk about the book, Ashley. Now, let's talk about what the book's about and, what the sort of the key themes in the book. I mean, there's 3 things that you sort of focus on in the book, which I want to dive into. And then I'm curious to understand why you wrote that book. So unlocking the world's largest e-market. So we understand. I mean, people know China's big, but maybe people don't realize how big the e-commerce side of things is, and especially social media. Help us understand, put some numbers or maybe some comparisons here, because the criticism has always been, China is a market of 1 billion plus people, but technologically it's kind of behind things, in the US. That's how people have thought for many years, but obviously things have changed in the last 5 years. Help us understand what's going on now and what kind of levels we've achieved in China with social media and e-commerce.
Right. So simply put, China is not only the world's largest, let's say, e-market, right, and the largest consumer market. It's also the most advanced market globally in terms of social media, cross-border e-commerce, new retail, that concept of unifying online and offline experiences. And they are literally ahead of the world in all that. There are many reasons for that. Firstly, it's how fast China advanced in the digital space, right? Back in the 90s or early 2000s, they barely had cell phones. They never had landlines. Many people never had laptops, right? They just never had, desktop computers. And then within a decade, with the cheap internet, with cheap technology, cheap devices, they just jumped into this mobile market. and they started shopping through mobile devices. They started, doing social media. They started blogging, and all that went explosive. China, the second thing about China is it's like Europe, right? We spoke about it last time, that it's not really one country. It's a huge collection of provinces and big cities. And it's really what unites that whole huge space and 1.3 billion consumers is the language. That no matter whether they are in Urumqi or Guangzhou or Beijing or Chongqing, all of them currently right now speak Mandarin Chinese, and they can type, and they basically can communicate with each other. So that's extremely unique, and that also creates a lot of opportunities. Besides that, just their buying power, because in the past 15, 20 years, Chinese government's been focusing on relocating the focus, like economic focus of the whole country from cheap manufacturing, from, resources and infrastructure build up into service industry, into, this consumerism, and they have succeeded. They fueled, they fueled and pushed people to buy more, to travel more, and a lot of tech giants like Alibaba or Tencent or before Baidu, they actually helped make that reality. So it's an extremely unique market. They are definitely ahead of the world. How and in which aspects and what is the technology, we can talk, I think, for hours. Do ask what's the most important and interesting, and I will tell you.
Yeah, there's a lot to take on board, not just because of the size of the market, but because what they have inside of China, not a lot of people are familiar with. We're just starting to hear Alibaba outside of China. People now are starting to get familiar with seeing Jack Ma on the TV. So we're starting to see China come outside, especially into Southeast Asia and, venturing into the US and so on. So it's starting to happen. People are very curious. What do we need to know? We talked quite in depth about WeChat in the last session that we did when we did your ATP stories. People would have heard of WeChat, and people may think that WeChat's a bit like, WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger, but it's different, isn't it? Let's just start there. That's proper. And you talk about WeChat as China's operating system in the book. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so WeChat is an operating system for life in China, right? It's not just a messaging app. Of course, it has social media capabilities, so you can create groups, you can chat, you can share your moments like a Facebook wall, but it's not a social media platform. At the same time, WeChat has sales capabilities, right? For example, you can set up, as a brand, you can set up a shop, and people can read your news like a newsletter, and they can also buy. You can launch customer relations, basically CRM systems and loyalty programs all through WeChat. So, for example, you want to buy a cup of Starbucks coffee, and your second visit will be 20% off. You don't need to carry a coupon or the loyalty card. Everything is integrated in WeChat. And before your coupon, let's say, expires, it sends you also notifications, and the shops also receive notifications how many customers, loyal customers, are around, and you can actually launch this kind of live, real-time promotions. Yeah, so it's cool for both users and brands. So it has those capabilities. At the same time, WeChat is also not a sales platform. So it's not Tmall, and it's not Taobao, it's not JD, right? So another aspect to it is testing the market, right? WeChat is a great way for you to, tap into some bloggers and do marketing and grow your database of Chinese consumers. Because in China, collecting emails, that's what we do in the West. We just want a database of emails to send people basically newsletters and keep selling them our products or services. But in China, email is not used, and phone number people don't share. So your only way to collect China consumer database, is to collect their WeChat ID or Weibo ID and keep communicating with them on those platforms. So it's a great way to build that database and activate it through promotions, bloggers, campaigns, pushing the messages, etc., etc. At the same time, having those marketing and advertising capabilities, WeChat is not a marketing platform. It's not like Facebook. Facebook makes 90% of their money through advertising, right? They sell our data to advertisers, and people push their promotions. WeChat doesn't do that. Only about 18% of their revenue as a group, Tencent, right, come from advertising. The rest comes from gaming. It comes from payments. It comes from all sorts of things. So although they provide that opportunity for brands to promote, that's not the core. So what is the core if marketing is not the core, if sales is not the core, if social is not the core? The core is functionality. They are trying to make the life of simple Chinese people easy and simple and digital. So what do I mean by that? You want to hail a taxi, you don't need to go to Uber. You just go to your WeChat. You want to book a flight. You want to book an apartment, a hotel, or you want to queue in your favorite restaurant. You can do it through WeChat. You want to, I do not know, right now they even issue
passports, right?
Yeah, exactly. WeChat ID as a passport. You want to check in or cross-border. I mean, it's crazy stuff.
Let's go back to the payment side. I think that's really important because I know you've mentioned that. I think that's a really big part of what people need to understand a bit better about China. It's just how embedded that payment system is, and not just in purchasing digital goods, but in day-to-day life. What can you buy with the payment system? Just give us some examples. What do you use it for?
What can't you buy with it? I would say. Well, in fact, a couple of months ago, probably 3 or 4 months ago, I went to Shanghai for a week, and literally 7 days. And that was the first time I went to Shanghai with zero cash. I had zero renminbi. I went with my WeChat, basically with my phone, and I was fine. From taxi, from the airport, to all my lunch bills, to buying, like literally going into the shop, and I bought a coat. Everything was through WeChat.
Is that tied to a bank account, or do you have a Tencent specific account? How does that work?
Yeah, it is connected with your. So basically, there are two ways. If you are on a WeChat wallet inside China, right? So you reside in China, you've got China bank accounts, etc. You can set up your own, let's say, Tencent system, and you can deposit money there directly. But most of the people connect it with their bank cards. If you are outside of China, like me in Hong Kong, it's still considered outside of China. So I use a different version of WeChat. I use WeChat international version. I can only connect it with my bank accounts. And it just basically became possible for me to even connect it with Hong Kong bank accounts a couple of months back. Before that, I had to ask my colleagues in China to send me money to my WeChat wallet to be able to spend it. Right. And most of the countries around the world with WeChat, they do not allow connecting bank accounts. Apart from South Africa, only like Taiwan, Hong Kong and Macau allow you to connect it with basically with bank account. The rest of the countries, you need to ask somebody with this, with the renminbi to send you that money before you can spend them.
Do people get paid by WeChat? Would an employer use that to give people their salary?
Actually, a lot of, like, for example, a lot of bloggers. I mean, I'm in marketing, right? And when we pay bloggers, a lot of bloggers prefer to be paid through WeChat.
Right.
A lot of them prefer to be paid by Alipay. So previously, it was all about if it's, let's say, below 10,000 RMB or 5,000 RMB, they prefer to be paid to their WeChat. And if it's above, they wanted to be paid to Alipay. And if it was, let's say, above 20 or 30,000 RMB, they would say, okay, you can transfer to my bank account. Right now, WeChat, together with a lot of brands and bloggers, they have worked very hard last year to actually increase that threshold. So what I mean by that, they actually recruited a couple of brands like Mini Cooper cars. And bloggers launched campaigns encouraging people to buy 300,000 or 500,000 or 1 million renminbi worth of cars and accessories through WeChat. right? So exclusive campaigns through WeChat, and people started spending that. 2 years ago, you could buy stuff, but probably not above, again, 10,000. Right now, people spend a lot of money on WeChat, and this threshold is increasing.
Right. Let's people understand that a little bit. So a million is about what, 150,000 US dollars approximately.
Yeah.
So I mean, substantial figures, right?
Substantial figures. Yeah.
Right. You could even buy a small apartment with those kind of numbers, right? I mean, we haven't quite got there yet, but pretty much everything that you need to buy, you can do through WeChat. And Alipay is the Alibaba platform.
Alipay, Alipay is basically the biggest online payment system in China. This last year, I think, last year in 2017, Alipay, for the first time in their life, was below 50%. I think it was 48 or 45% of the total market value. And WeChat rose and grew exponentially last year. So they're now occupying about 35 to 40% of the market. And the rest 10% are all sorts of other digital payment systems. But the market is growing so fast, and it's just absolutely fascinating. People say that China is going to be the first cashless society. And I always thought that, we're not there yet, because Chinese love their cash. And that is true. It's not going to disappear, in my opinion. Cash is not going to disappear, but the amount of cash transactions went down significantly.
What would you use cash for? Is there any sort of obvious use of cash that people still need it for in China?
Well, to be very honest, you can do everything digitally. I mean, the other day I was also in China and walking on the street, and there are those guys selling, selling this, the plastic toys for 5 RMB. Crap on the street, and they have a little QR code attached to their backpack. So you scan a QR code and you buy that thing, from the street vendor through WeChat. So even don't need cash for. And you can buy your sweet potato, the baked potato for 1 RMB, for basically a couple of cents, right? You also can buy it through WeChat. But people still use cash for, they use it for, older people still like to carry cash. Yeah, so it just feels good.
Yeah, but security as well, isn't it? So when you come back to Hong Kong, does it feel strange? Because, Hong Kong's quite advanced, but
oh my goodness,
do you feel like you're going backwards when you sort of have to pay with cash again?
Minimum 40 years backwards. It's just it's literally a different world. It's just, you cannot compare. You literally cannot compare. Hong Kong is so many years behind that, first of all, in Hong Kong, there's virtually no e-commerce at all. There's no, Amazon is not here. Tmall, Taobao is not really here. It's extremely inconvenient. When I order something from a supermarket, it takes them 3 days to deliver it to my apartment. It's just crazy. Hong Kong is a very compact city, so people just prefer to carry their shopping with them. Right. And also in Hong Kong, this is past time. If they buy something, they want to carry it, they want to walk with it, they want to go to coffee shops. So shopping for them is more like like entertainment, like past time. And online shopping is not. In China, online shopping is entertainment. And also there are a lot of technology, like, for example, VR, this virtual reality thing, gamification, integration between TV is basically called social TV. You're watching TV, or you're watching, TV series on, like, Chinese version of Netflix, and something pops up on the screen, and you scan a QR code, and then you see a second screen through your mobile device, and you can basically create a completely different experience through this multimedia use of stuff. So you can, like last time, I was watching something on TV, and they asked me to scan QR code. You scan it, and then you can, with this VR camera, you can scan your room, and you can place characters from this movie inside your living room. Mm-hmm. So they will be acting Like you watch the movie, but at the same time, if you look through your mobile device, you see them acting the same thing in your living room.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about
for fun, but it just think what it can do in a couple of years from now.
I'm curious about the video side of things, because I'm seeing a lot of noise coming out of China about how people are using video now. I mean, people are obviously familiar with YouTube in other countries, and what's happened, obviously, it's a different market in China on the video side, but in recent years, there's been an explosion of video, especially like talent driven videos, isn't it, where people are sort of creating these sort of mini stars, if you like YouTube stars. So what's the story there? Sort of fill us in, because there's so much going on and we don't know what they're talking about and what the context is. Is this, are these people super famous on these talent shows on video? Start from zero. Teach us what's going on the video side of things in China.
Videos in China, it's just a crazy industry. You cannot imagine. So let's start with that. In China, let's say 15 years ago, you could not imagine that somebody would actually pay for movies, right? Or pay for entertainment. Everybody would buy 1 renminbi worth of, fake DVDs, pirated DVDs, and watch online. At the same time, there were tons of websites that provided this kind of pirated movies, blah, blah, blah. Then everything changed about 4 or 5 years ago when Netflix-like services appeared, where you could actually live stream some content for free, and you could live stream some content for a small fee, right? When those platforms exploded, many people started creating content by themselves, and they basically became their own production houses. And tons and tons of bloggers appeared. What kind of bloggers? I mean, from a ridiculous, lady who is sitting there and eating bananas. That's a very famous example. She collected millions of followers eating bananas.
What is that about, Ashley? I see these like videos pop up randomly of like girls just eating on. What's the appeal there? Like a girl just eating noodles, but there's like 1 million followers. Am I missing out on something?
Yeah, you are. Because in China right now, it's a huge single market. So a lot of people are single. A lot of people actually marry much later. So there are several implications. For instance, pet products, so anything for pets, and generally this pet market, getting baby hamsters or cats or dogs is on the rise. At the same time, people are looking for company. So if I'm eating alone, my dinner alone or my breakfast alone, or the lunch is usually eaten with colleagues or classmates, but breakfast and dinner is eaten alone, they like to tune in and watch somebody else eat.
Interesting.
So that creates
live, or is it just
live? Yeah, sometimes live. And if it's a famous blogger, then you just watch her.
Let's eat together.
Yeah. and
have you ever been tempted to do that?
Well, you must consider, because Korea is another huge market that does it. There are boys that are 14 years old and they make millions US dollars by just consuming. I think they're constantly eating for at least 4 or 5 hours a day.
Wow. They're
consuming tons of food, and people pay monthly subscription to tune in and watch them eat.
Just watch them eat.
So for China, it's not about, constantly watching them eat or subscribing to something, though there are bloggers like this. Right now, it's primarily about live streaming. Yeah. So it went through several stages. There were videos, like longer videos. For example, a very famous blogger, Papi Jiang. She's one of the highest paid bloggers. She is a girl from Shanghai. She studied film and producing, and she created those really fun, I would say, anecdotes. Yeah, so she shares those anecdotes from her life, and boys and girls, blah blah blah. So she's really funny. Her popularity is just beyond compare. Long videos and really really well done. Then it went into short movies. So people just wanted to get access to places where they can usually not go. For example, it's a fashion show, and one of the bloggers shows you, a short video how, things are behind the scenes. And right now, it's all about live streaming. And when you think about live streaming, it's not like you don't really need to have a theme. There are bloggers that live stream how they walk to work, how they wake up, how they brush their teeth, how they, I do not know, plant flowers. Once you hook your audience on you as personality, then whatever you live stream is up to you. People are just going to watch it because they feel that they are participating in your life and they have a connection and a relationship with you. And that's very unique to China. And right now, if you get to China, to Shanghai, Beijing, or any first or second tier city, you probably cannot enter a shop or a restaurant and just enjoy your meal without somebody jumping up and starting singing a song or coming and, sticking that camera into your face as a foreigner, because they are live streaming and they are entertaining their audiences, right? And this is crazy. And right now they also have those platforms like, for example, Douyin. That's a rather popular platform right now, where two independent bloggers with their channels and with their fans are challenging each other to live stream challenges. So, for example, I would say, Graham, let's shake our, I do not know, shoulders. Yeah, it sounds funny, but like imagine we are like shaking shoulders. It's a 15-minute challenge. So the only thing we do, we're shaking shoulders on camera, and millions of people are watching and they are voting who does it better.
Right. And how do they make money out of that? Is it just advertising or is it subscription again?
No, well, it's not. It's tips. So basically you can tip blogger. You can also buy them. So you can buy them a gift. For example, they can buy you a Starbucks coffee. They can buy you a car. They can buy you a horse. They can buy you an apartment. I mean, it's crazy stuff. At the same time, they can just send you hongbao, which is the basically red envelopes, right? The money tips. Yeah. And that's how they make money. I know one guy from South Africa who about a year and a half ago discovered Miaopai. It's one of the live streaming platforms in China. So a friend of his told him, oh, check it out. It's an interesting thing. So he is literally a farm boy in South Africa, blonde. He, live streamed his farm life for like 20 minutes. On the first day, he had 4 viewers. On the second day, he had 20. On the, fifth day, he basically had several hundred people tuned. 4 months down the road, it was his birthday, and he received his first gift of about 90,000 RMB, which is, let's say, 15,000 US dollars. After that, he quit his life in the farm and he moved to Shanghai. So right now, he's a famous blogger and vlogger. He even speaks a bit of Chinese, and he lives high-end life in China now. So yeah,
living the dream. So if I was to move to China and I was to set myself up on one of these platforms, what advice would you give me? What could I make it as? How could I'm not going to do the shaking shoulders thing. Sounds like somebody's already done that. What sort of room is there for a foreigner to sort of crack it in that market, especially if they can't speak that great Chinese?
Yeah. I think you need to show people something different. So, for example, this guy from South Africa, he showed them a different side of life. Oh, there is a farm and there are, 3 cows and it's so beautiful. And
it's quite analog as well, isn't it? In a digital world, it's quite sort of refreshing, isn't it?
Right. It's very refreshing. And also, you need to stand out. So if you are a foreigner, you have so many opportunities in the market because people will remember your face and people will also share. They find something fun, interesting, unusual, something they haven't seen before, they're going to share. So there's no formula. But some people were successful, sharing, relationship advice. Some people were successful foreigners. They traveled to China or they traveled the world and they tried all the street food. Some people, as you said, shaking shoulders. So there's no recipe, but you need to be different. You need to be original, and you just need to find a platform that's not yet so crowded. If you now go to Miaopai or Meipai or Douyin, it might be a bit overpopulated, and it's difficult to break through this noise.
So there's not like one platform like we would understand YouTube is the platform. I mean, there's other sort of video streaming platforms like Vimeo, but it's nothing compared to YouTube as the channel. It's like the channel.
Right.
There's different channels, and those sort of come and go. Right. They don't have sort of any particular consolidated platform, which you say, right, just everybody get onto that.
Right. So in China, there are more than 60 platforms that are unique to that market. And new platforms are dying and, being born all the time. So there are major platforms that everybody knows, like, let's say, Chinese version of YouTube or WeChat or Weibo or Douban. But if you are looking at China market from the perspective of, I want to break into that market and I want to become an influencer, it's much better to look at smaller niche platforms and to catch them before they go really big and viral. So for that, you probably just need to stay on top of what's happening. Just set yourself a Google alert with like new social media platform, is popular in China, something like that. So when something comes up, you will get a Google notification, and then you set up your account, and then you just start live streaming.
That's interesting. Yeah.
You don't need. Many Chinese right now, first of all, they study abroad, they go abroad, they travel, they speak the language, but they are interested to see a different side of life, a different country. If you come from a country like, that they haven't heard much about or from before, that's also an advantage. How is life like in, I do not know, in Guatemala or in Russia?
South Africa, as an example, right?
South Africa, yeah.
Vladivostok. What about yourself? I mean, you're instantly recognizable, as I keep saying. But I mean, you said yourself, you're blonde, you stand out. You're obviously not Chinese from, look from the outside, right? Even though you speak fantastic Mandarin and so on. What about yourself? I know you do Ashley Talks, but do you do anything on the social media platforms, on streaming? I mean, do you sit down and stream your dinner, or what do you do? I mean, in terms of streaming?
Right. So for me, actually, that's a fantastic question, because I've been running a social media agency and running a couple of social, platforms. It was very difficult for me to start sharing my personal life again, because I come from from that place that, okay, nobody would be interested, and this is weird. But about a year ago, I decided that for business purposes and also for the personal growth, I would say, targets, I need to start sharing my life and building my personal brand. So it's slightly different. It's not really, sharing with Chinese consumer, or let's say Chinese general public, how I eat my dinner, but it was more about sharing my business journey and what I do daily, and how life in China and Hong Kong and business in Hong Kong is. So I started a YouTube channel, and I can tell you, for the first probably 4 months, I didn't have many views, probably 30 views per video, and it was a lot of effort, and I felt that nothing is happening. But then at one point, one of my videos went viral, and I instantly got like 700 subscribers to my YouTube channel. And then from there onwards, you start building, right? Then you get invitations to like Alibaba thing, and then you get invitations to speak at amazing events, and then you get, you start writing a book, and then you get your own TV program, and now the podcast, etc., etc., etc. So even in professional setting, you can see how this definitely pays off. If you, however, again, for me, I didn't go to the blogger route. Blogger as of, B2C blogger. A colleague of mine in the office, her name is Susie, she actually did. She is a famous blogger in China, and she is blogging about, stationery and journaling, and basically she travels, and then she creates those beautiful paintings of, places and food, etc., etc., and she records it and shares on social networks. She has got hundreds of thousands of fans, and brands like GoPro come to her and, fly her all around the world. So it is possible to do it even now. You just need to pick what you want to do with your personal brand. Is it going to be B2B, B2C oriented, and, where you want to take it?
I want to ask you a question, which I think people will be instantly curious about China, which is that you're a foreigner in China, and obviously you've written a book about China, so you are an authority. and you have very deep experience in the Chinese market. Is it easier as a foreigner to succeed in China than it is for a local Chinese person? And the reason I ask is that because I sometimes think that people look at foreign markets and say, oh, it's going to be hard because I'm an outsider, I'm foreign. How about for yourself? Because, you've written a book, you've got a social media agency, you've done a lot of things, and, you've mastered the language. What are your thoughts? To anybody sort of looking in at China, is that an issue?
Yeah. Great question. I actually think, in my honest opinion, it is a huge advantage. When I got to China, back in 2005, 2006, I felt like a celebrity. People would take pictures with me on the street, and I could get access to the owners of, multi-million dollar companies and maybe billion-dollar companies just because I was a foreigner, right? So it's definitely not the same right now in places like Shanghai and Beijing and Guangzhou, because there's a lot more foreigners, and Chinese people are generally, very comfortable with them by now. But you still get special treatment. It is harder maybe in some aspects because a lot of foreigners come with a wrong expectation of China. They think it is all about, it's all about one thing, but in reality, it's all about another thing. So my advice would be, if you go to China and you want to succeed there, just come open-minded, just learn, just make local friends, build those relationships, build those guanxi. And I still believe it is a huge, huge advantage. And also it is a question of your mindset. Is your mindset enabling you to succeed in that market, or is your mindset prohibiting you from succeeding in that market? If you feel that you are inferior in terms of the language, okay, but I think it is also an advantage. You're bringing something to that table. You can learn basic Chinese. If you're not willing to learn, that's your problem. But
exactly.
you're bringing experience from outside of China. That's what they're really interested about. You're bringing a different perspective. You're bringing a lot of things into that market. So come there with open heart, open mind, learn, master the language to whichever level you have to or you want to, and just work hard. People appreciate that. Make genuine connections with people and build genuine relationships. That will always pay off, not only in China, around the world. And China is a fantastic place to do that, because, as we all know, guanxi and relationships are driving business opportunities and
it's everything, isn't it? Hey, let's talk. You mentioned that people come to China with expectations, and sometimes those expectations aren't the right expectations. And I want to dive into this a little bit, because you've written a book to help people understand.
Right.
What are the common things people get wrong, if I can use that word, about China from the outside? What are people you talk about people coming to China and they think it's going to be this, but it actually is that. In the context of the e-market, what are the common things that people are getting wrong? Especially, let's sort of make this easy. When people write about China, when people are sort of commenting from the West Coast of America or Silicon Valley, what sort of things do you think are common misconceptions about the Chinese e-market?
Well, I think the first misconception is that Chinese consumers are just buying, and they are buying everything, and nobody understands why are they buying, but they are just big shoppers. That's not true. They are extremely sophisticated consumers. They know why they are buying. Yes, they have different motives to many, foreign countries and Western countries. They know why they are buying. They're extremely sophisticated. They know what they don't want. They know what they want often, but not always. They expect very high level of customer service. They are not cheap anymore. A lot of companies come and say, okay, we want Chinese consumers and cheap. It's not about cheap. It's about good and reasonable. So they still need to feel that they're getting a good deal. Also luxury consumption, for example. A lot of people write about, luxury consumers in China, and they refer to people from, right now third and fourth tier cities that still want big brands, etc. But now more and more people are trying to find personalized products, and not only brands, but they also want, tailor stuff. And it's not anymore about spending big money and not only getting that reputation, getting that face, the means. It's also about feeling that this is something that sets you apart. And even if people in my, let's say, circle will not know this designer or this brand or this tailor-made good, I need to feel good about it. Mm-hmm. They are also more about affordable luxury, not like hard luxury. So what very few people understand when they comment about China is also how complex it is. You cannot just say Chinese consumers or Chinese digital or Chinese social media, because it is like Europe. Each little bit and each city and each province is completely different. They have their own buying behavior, preferences, social networks, reasons to buy or not to buy, etc., etc., etc. So very, very few people don't oversimplify China. So this oversimplification and also bringing in that, I would say, that old school thinking that China is cheap, China is all about good deals, China is loud, China is this, China is that. I think these are the major problems.
Well, I think this is the curve which every country and culture goes through when it evolves, isn't it? And often, any kind of market that develops starts from one position, and the consumers develop as well. They get knowledge, they become mature, they have experience, they start like, what people have as expectations of Chinese consumers, so to speak. And that has sort of been a reputation that's followed them. But things have moved on, especially, I imagine, in the tier one cities, that people are a lot more, complex, as you say.
And it's not only complexity. Just think about it. I mean, previously, talking about China, it was all about educating the market. So I'm the brand, or I'm the company, or and I educate the market. I tell them how to drink coffee, and how to eat chocolate, and how to do sports, and how to play basketball, and how to use whatever. But right now it's the consumer that's educating a foreign brand or even a local brand on how to better serve them.
So that era of education is over. Anyone that comes to China thinking I'm going to teach them how to use, how to drink wine, as an example from years ago, that's gone.
It's gone for sure. It's gone. Again, it's gone for first and second tier cities. And this area of education is going to third and fourth tier cities.
Right.
So it's different. And right now, Chinese consumers, they're extremely demanding, and they are telling you, guys, we want you to provide exceptional service 24/7, and it needs to be done on our terms, in our local language. And for example, you cannot bring us this, let's say, I do not know, certain design of clothing that fits European bodies but doesn't fit us, and have us buy it. You need to adjust it, and that's how we want it, that's how we don't want it. And it's happening everywhere in terms of digital technology. Also, they say, guys, we don't want to buy through your website, through e-commerce, luxury brands. You need to create an outstanding experience, not just be luxury and be old school. You need to actually push your headquarters to change the way you work for us in our market, because that's what we want.
Mm-hmm. For next time, for the next Ashley Talks, can we go into some of those stories, some real case studies about what is happening? You talk about the consumers teaching the market, teaching the brands. Can you give us just an insight now? Give us one example of something from your book, maybe about where consumers have taught brands. And then maybe for part 2, as the follow-up, we can really sort of go in and sort of indulge the listeners in really what's going on at the grassroots level in China. Let's go back to that subject. Where in China has consumers taught brands, and what kind of examples, what's interesting out there where, not necessarily a brand that's come from outside, it could be a local brand.
Yeah. Like, for example, let me give you an example of cocktail. So it's basically a cocktail mix, a local brand. They are an alcoholic cocktail mix. Don't ask me what that thing is all about, but it was extremely popular for several years in China. They were advertising everywhere, and that's traditional way to launch product in the market and to basically occupy China market. You invest a lot of money in advertising, you invest a lot of money in the launch, you hire bloggers and you hire celebrities, and you're all over TV, digital and offline display advertising, right? So this company, a China-owned company, invested millions of dollars, and I'm talking US dollars right now, for a year and a half, and they were successful. So the moment this hype was over, the moment they started decreasing advertising spend, their sales went nearly to zero. Why? Chinese consumers, respond to advertising, but at the same time, they were demanding much better product, because basically nobody needed this cocktail thing, and it was like a party extravaganza. Okay, they advertise, it's sort of cool, but they never understood the market, whether there is really this niche, right? They never listened to feedback, because in China right now, if you want to launch a new product, you don't create a product, launch it in the market, and then take it back 9 months later if it didn't work. Usually, you launch a product online, you ask opinion, and people feedback, and only if it's successful, you actually launch it. Like this famous chocolate brand, Rita Sport, they launched. You're gonna laugh. It's called Unicorn Rita Sport.
Wow.
Unicorn, and you don't ask me what flavor it is, but I think
rainbow flavor,
strawberry. Yeah, it was strawberry and white chocolate and some other crazy stuff. They launched it. It became extremely successful, so they had to basically manufacture more of it. And at one point, the price of that chocolate bar became $200 or $300 just because people basically bought and were selling. It was crazy.
Was that done with? Did they go out to the market first and do the MVP with the influencers, or their sort of small consumer groups and the consumer?
Actually, quite unexpected. They launched it as a campaign. They said, guys, we've got this limited edition thing. Try it out. For the holiday, here is the unicorn flavored chocolate or whatever. That's cool. Suddenly it became such a hit that guys were absolutely unprepared to manufacture more of those chocolates. And then obviously the price inflated, blah, blah, blah. So these guys tested it. They understood that there was need in the market, and then they introduced it as a prolonged campaign, and they probably shipped a couple of containers of that to China, and it became the thing. But for this brand, the Chinese brand that I'm talking about, they didn't do that. They launched the product the old way, like they did always in China. You create a product, then you invest a lot of money, you educate the market, and then you're going to be fine. The moment you stop advertising, it must be fine because, so many people buy and we use so many celebrities. It did not work. So their shareholder company, the big beverage company in China, they lost, I think, 1.3 billion renminbi with that. So obviously consumers are extremely different and they behave extremely differently now. Another example would be, what's it called? Like a delivery service. Let's talk about Food Panda, right? Here in Hong Kong, we have Food Panda or Deliveroo. Yeah, so a very similar service in China was actually in a bit of trouble last year. Every year on CCTV, China government, so there is this CCTV gala, yearly gala, right? And CCTV is the national channel in China. And every year they uncover some, I would say they do some investigation journalism, and they uncover some scandals. So, for example, one year Nike was in the spotlight. They figured out that they're using very cheap materials, as their resins, for soles, etc. So basically, they're selling very cheap shoes, not the same shoes for China and for, let's say, U.S. market, right? So that was a big scandal. Another year, they figured out that this Fukushima, Japanese nuclear plant leakage, some of the cookies that were sold in China from Japan were actually originated somewhere near Fukushima, but they were marked as manufactured in Tokyo. So that became also a huge, I would say, scandal, right? So last year, CCTV announced that they checked out this specific food delivery service, and some of their vendors, some of the restaurants that were using this platform were not what they claimed they were. For example, you claim that you are a food court in place A, but you are actually operating out of a private kitchen, your apartment. So they investigated that. And of course, it's like national thing. So the whole China is watching it. So it was the national kind of, sentiment, and everybody was shocked. A guy who was managing their social media, their marketing director, wrote a social media post, which was literally saying, "Oh, very sorry, we forgot to pay CCTV this year."
Wow.
As of bribe. And that's usually, the Chinese are humorous. Yeah, they like to joke and they like to poke at each other. But that was just,
that was not a good move, was it?
That was not a good move. So this guy wanted to be funny instead of
enemies
and going through the crisis management. So Chinese consumers taught him such a big lesson.
Yeah.
First of all, 70% of consumers mentioned that they want to unsubscribe and not use this service anymore, even though it was number one in China. China government also fined them a couple of 100,000 renminbi. And there was so much black PR, I would say, so much black.
The damage is done, isn't it? I think those guys have, they're going to have to just retreat and hide in a hole for many years before they come back out, right?
Well, they came back a little bit, but they lost about half of their, they lost about half or 40% of their user base, right? And that gave, again, another splash. So other providers obviously could grab a bit of the pie and grab a bit of the market. But that's what's happening. Chinese consumers are not passive anymore like they used to be. They are active and they are taking a stand, and they know they have the power. They have the power to bring even big players down.
Yeah, and it's fantastic. And I don't think maybe that's one of the expectations that people get wrong about China as well. Even to think of a TV station doing investigative journalism as well. That's something that maybe people aren't expecting. Hey, do you think we've unlocked the world's largest e-market tonight? What do you want to talk about next? When we do the follow-up, what is the subject? Let's pick a subject from your book and let's go into that in a bit more detail. What really excites you?
The thing that excites me a lot right now about China is new retail.
Yes.
And
I want to talk about that.
It's all about, unified experience, online, offline, mobile, big data, amazing technology, virtual windows and mirrors. And it's crazy. And it's not the future. The future is now. China has thousands of those shops in major cities already. And I experienced it firsthand as well last November and December. And every time I go to China, I make a point to go and experience it. And it's not just ahead of Hong Kong, because in Hong Kong, as I mentioned, we are 40 years behind, but it's literally ahead of the world.
So
that would be a good topic, I think, for next time.
Excellent. We're not just talking about robots as well. We're talking about the whole experience as well. I saw the Alibaba stuff. It's just phenomenal. So that is a whole, we can get a whole episode out of that, unlocking that part, that whole retail, the new retail, as you call it.
The new retail,
Retail frontiers. We've got a lot to learn. Ashley, it's been phenomenal.
And this is going to influence not only China. For those people that think that what we talk about here is, China. With this, the pace of development in China and also these technologies, especially new retail, e-commerce, etc., these changes are going to spread far beyond China. And they're going to influence the way we do business and we do commerce outside of mainland in the rest of the world.
Without a doubt. Especially when you have people like Jack Ma, who are actively out there. He speaks, great English, and he's out there. Meeting Donald Trump and telling Donald Trump that he's going to, give the Americans 1 million jobs. Yeah. So, through his e-commerce platform, it's just, that is the start. That is really the vanguard, the tip of the spear, if you like, that sort of opens it up for everybody else. Because once he sort of makes that successful, then it clears the path for lots of other Chinese companies to go and do the same, right? And
yeah, absolutely. And we can talk about that as well. I think it's a fantastic topic too, to talk about China going global. And I know it's probably a funny slogan, and people have different opinions about it, but China going global is happening.
It's happening, yeah.
Really happening through Chinese companies acquiring Western counterparts. It's not that they are past that stage by now. They are going global for real in many, many different ways, aspects, industries, and this is fascinating. From philanthropy to technology to acquisitions to creating joint brands and cross-branding. It's just amazing, fascinating stuff.
Excellent. More to come. Part 2 coming up. We're going to dive into new retail, and Ashley's going to share insights into what the future looks like now in China and what we're going to see in the rest of the world. Ashley, fantastic. Author of Unlocking the World's Largest E-Market, a guide to selling on Chinese social media, which you can get on Amazon. And obviously, if you've read the book, a review would be fantastic as well. So, that's already doing well. I mean, you've done well with the reviews this far, but always great to get more reviews. So if you have a copy of the book, get onto Amazon and leave Ashley a review. I'm sure you read absolutely every review as well. So
yes, I do.
Good feedback as well. And you'll be back next time, and we will unlock more
of China and the world. Thank you so much, Graham. It was a great, great pleasure.
You've been listening to Asia Tech Podcast.